Hi everybody, welcome to Sandra's Art Studio. Today we are going to do a little seahorse and we're going to use polymer clay, which is a material that I find very easy to work with. And these are the pieces I'll be using for my silicone rubber mold. The darker teal horse that you see to your left is a finished product and I like the way it came out, so I'm replicating pretty much, but these new seahorses, I'm making them a little bit chunkier because I have another project in mind in the near future. But in this video, we are gonna do the seahorses with epoxy resin, which is going to be the finished project. Also notice that I am curling the tail all the way, and there's a reason for that because I noticed that a lot of times the tail was so skinny at the end, or it had a bubble at the end and it would break off, or it was easier for people to tangle their hair. These are going to be hair sticks. So keeping those things in mind, I'm curling the tail all the way so I don't have that little gap where it makes it gives issues. I just don't want to have issues, right? So I was just gonna do the seahorse, but then I changed my mind and I thought, hey, let's give the seahorses a happy little home. So I'm actually making a sea coral where the seahorse are gonna be happy to hang on to, right? So you see the pasta machine, I'm flattening it. I'm using a very thin setting, not too thin to where it's gonna break away. And then I use this cookie cutter. I think it's about 3 inches long. And you're gonna watch how I put this whole thing together. And as you're watching this video, I'm gonna talk a little bit about how I came up with this whole idea. Some of you may not know. Basically, I've had some scalp issues for some years now, where if I use metal hair clips, it irritates my scalp, so I stay away from those. And I started playing, a couple years ago, I started playing with chopsticks, and I noticed that the chopstick was not irritating to my scalp. So I started doing different things with the chopsticks, and I realized, woo, there's, I actually enjoy playing with epoxy resins as well. And that's how this whole hair clip business was born. And while we're talking about business of hair clips, this is, I think, a great idea for anybody that is on the creative side and loves to tinker with different materials, because this is what you do with this type of business. You're playing with polymer clays, then you make your molds out of silicone rubbers, then you're playing with epoxy resins, then you grind it a little bit on the edges so you don't have any sharp corners, and then you also shape your bamboo chopsticks and attach them to the piece you want at the end of your hair stick, and so on. It's just a fun, if you're that kind of person, you're gonna just be in a playground when it comes to, it's like, this is, to me, it's not work. It's just so much fun to do all of these little pieces and then put it together and show it to the people. And people are so welcoming and so nice, and they love how it looks. Not everybody can wear it, but a lot of people give me the compliment, especially because it's an original idea. Nobody's seen it out there. And I picked this theme that is perfect for the Treasure Coast, which is all things tropical. Okay, so now back to what you do to make these things happen, right? So polymer clay, once it's done, you want to cook it at 275 degrees for 15 minutes. Now I'm using one of those small ovens, the air fryers, and I just do 5 more minutes. I burn the tails, but it's not a big deal. And then I paint it with this gesso, and the gesso is kind of like a primer. So I paint both sides of my polymer clay. If you don't paint them with gesso and then acrylic, this is what I do, gesso and then acrylic. If you don't do it and you just use straight polymer clay, and then you're going to go ahead and make a mold out of silicone rubber, what will happen, and I found out the hard way, is that the silicone rubber will not cure all the way. And I thought that the only thing that would inhibit the cure of silicone rubber would be sulfur, and there's no sulfur in polymer clay, but it turns out that it has something to do with the urethane content. So that's why you want to use acrylic. And I used the gloss acrylic. I only have red right now, but I used the gloss acrylic after I did the gesso because I want that finish. So if you have a matte paint on it, it's gonna have that matte finish. If you use a glossy paint, it's gonna have a shiny finish. So that's a good thing to keep in mind when you're painting your pieces. So once they're dry, you want to make sure that they're really dry before casting your mold. And here I'm using a paper plate that has like a plastic coating on it, which is perfect, and securing it with the hot glue gun so they don't move around when I pour my silicone rubber. And instead of wasting space, I happen to have some seahorses that I made just recently, and a sea turtle will fit there just fine. So why not cast some more seahorses and sea turtles? So here, the first batch of silicone rubber was just not quite enough, so I had to do it again. And I did this somewhere around 9 p.m. and first thing in the morning around 7 a.m. I was able to get the mold out and get all the pieces out of the mold. And it was easy also to remove the plastic from the hot glue gun that was on the polymer clay pieces. And as you can see, that silicone rubber likes to seep underneath my pieces, so I use an X-Acto knife to cut those little pieces out. Everything came out pretty good, and now I'm ready for my epoxy resin. And if you are enjoying this video, please show your support by liking and subscribing. You know how this works. Thank you guys. And once you are ready to pour your epoxy resin, you want to make sure that you have all the ingredients in your cup. So in this case, I'm going to have a little bit of white paint. I'm going to have some iridescent flakes, and I'm going to have some mica. All of that goes into the cup before I even pour my epoxy resin. So there I'm showing off the mica is actually used in makeup. And of course, once you pour your epoxy resin, you got two parts, the hardener and the resin, and you want to make sure that you stir it really well, okay? Because otherwise you're going to have sections that are not going to cure properly. They're going to stay gummy, sticky. So now that it's nice and stirred up really well, you get all the sides and the bottom of your cup, then I'm ready to pour. And on the turtle and on the coral, I'm going to do two colors. So my first pour is going to be white, and the second pour is going to be like a teal, like a dark teal color. And definitely wear gloves. Don't do what I'm doing here, which is cleaning up the cup side with my fingers. Don't do that. That resin is horrible for your health. It actually goes straight to your liver. And then to clean it up, you got to use alcohol, and your skin does not like alcohol. So just wear a pair of gloves. Don't do what I'm doing. And sometimes I need a little stick to move the resin all the way to the edges. Sometimes I grab a little toothpick too, so that way I eliminate some of the bubbles that are kind of like tucked in the edges. And after a couple of hours, I'll go ahead and pour my second color. And while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'll go ahead and work on my sticks and get all of that ready. And once everything comes out, I line up my sticks and attach the pieces to the sticks using also epoxy resin. Now, sometimes I need to poke a little bit on the back of these pieces because they can be a little too slick. So if you just poke a little bit with the X-Acto knife, then your stick is not going to slide when you try to set that with the epoxy resin. And then you take your pieces to the grinder and make sure that all the sharp edges are gone, and any imperfections, just go ahead and sand them down. I also sand the back of these pieces because I don't want it to be too slick, since these are hair clips. I want the hair clip to be just a little rough on the back, so I'll sand them down. The seahorses, you want to make sure everything on all the sides, that nothing is sharp, nothing is too pointy, so you got to take your time with that. And I do like having it on the stick already when I take it to a grinder, because I also have like a handheld drill, as you see right now. that I'll go ahead and do the fine tuning with it. And of course, make sure your holes are nice and clean. I have a bit on this drill that is exactly the size I need for the sticks to pass through. And I do like this drill because you can change the bits with your hands. You don't have to use the wrench that it comes with, which if you over tighten, you will ruin the drill. So heads up on that. And make sure to have different size bits so you can get into tighter areas. And once everything is nice and smooth, go ahead and take it to the hot water and the cold water treatment. The hot water is going to bend it and the cold water is going to set it at the shape you want. And the last thing you want to do is embellish, like maybe some crystals on the eyes or black dots, whatever it is that you want. And now all there is left to do is to put it on and take a video, and hope to see you guys next time. Thank you for watching. Bye.